I'm going to start recording now, guys. Once again, thanks to everybody for joining in. If you will tune into my stream, you will see that I have the agenda up for today. This is like a real quick breakdown of what I want to cover for the purposes of this workshop. If you are new to bracket running, this will be an immense help. If you are not new to bracket running, there may still be some things that you learn. Or if you're a seasoned pro and you've run a ton of brackets, this may have some information that maybe you agree with and some information that you might not agree with. I think in general, it's been my experience that no two bracket runners are exactly the same. That likewise goes the same for TOs. If you guys have any sort of insight or anything, please feel free to add it towards the end once we open it up for discussion, or you can put it in the chat there on the side. But before we get started, I just kind of wanted to kind of break down my history as a TO. I got started back in 2012, and I was able to run a bunch of local events in Houston, where I'm from. First, it was mostly just locals at various different shops, and then eventually became the TO for Third Strike at Texas Showdown for several years. I've TO'd since then at a bunch of other majors and a bunch of events across the country. Everything from like locals to regionals to majors to the Jazzy Circuit finale. And so I have a ton of experience doing this at all different scales in different parts of the country. And that is basically my background as a TO. But I will also have helping me out tonight, MrPart2. Jose, if you don't mind, just let people know where you're from and how long you've been doing this.
Hey, good evening. Good evening, everybody. So yeah, part two, Jose, you can call me either or. I've been, I guess, a part of the FGC. Everyone goes by their SRK start date since 2006. As soon as I joined, I immediately got into wanting to run a bracket, right, and helping out with local events. So I started small potatoes, like helping with the monthlies that we were having back at Nickel City, just small things. And then that turned into Frosty Faustines, helping run their very first Third Strike tournament, which was at Nickel City as well. And then we moved to the hotel, the Holiday Inn down the street. But then that turned into what you see today as Frosty, which now I'm actually the retro game lead for that particular event. So I help out with Third Strike, VSAV, ST, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And I don't play the games regularly, but I'm very familiar. I'm well versed in them. Very familiar with those communities as well. I also help at Logan Arcade. I help run all their monthlies. I have a great team there, which is also very important, I feel, as well. We'll get into that. And that's kind of where I'm at today. And then I signed up for Jazzy. I've been on the board for, 3 years now? 4 years now. Oh, the time has been going. But I actually learned a lot more joining the Jazzy Circuit board and how to run like a bigger bracket, bigger pool from the likes of like KD and Mutant, and just what it takes to run a big event like this. And as KD mentioned too, how we run things at the finale and such, and the problems you might run into, the solutions that we've come across, and how we've been able to keep it so efficient and such a well-run event. So, but we'll get more into that, of course. So yeah, I'm excited for you all to be here. I appreciate it again. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. Thanks for joining us for this. I want to say Jose is one of the people that I enjoy running brackets with. He helped at the very first finale that we had at Aki, and I ended up having to run due to some logistical circumstances. I ended up having to run both pools, and Jose was a huge help in doing that. So like I mentioned, not everybody runs brackets the exact same way. So anything that you guys may do that's different, just consider this sort of just like a best practices sort of thing. It doesn't have to be this way. This is not like the Bible of bracket running. This is sort of just like a general information for people to consider, especially if you have no experience running brackets, right? Like if you're somebody that is just trying to start running brackets for the first time, it can be very daunting. It can be very confusing. And with that, our very first objective is we're going to try and create an event on Start GT. For anybody that has ever tried to use StartGG, you already know its strengths and its weaknesses. There are some cool key features that are really nice to have. And then there are some not so great features that are hindrances in more ways than one. You will figure out the more that you mess with Start, what you like and what you don't like about it. Overall, this seems to be the main website or the main utility for bracket running in the FGC, particularly when it comes to majors. They like to run most of their operations through StartGG. And so you'll see most brackets run through here. The other one that's really popular, and it's the one that got replaced, is Challenge. Challenge is a very sort of bare bones, basic style bracket running website. I have run a ton of events on here, and it's to me a lot easier to set up. So if you like one over the other, that is fantastic. For the purposes of Jazzy, though, because our league feature is married to StartGG, we are basically tied to them until we can figure out maybe an alternative, or an alternative gets discovered or created by somebody else. But for the purposes of StartGG, essentially once you have logged into your account, this is the login page. And so if you want to create a bracket, it's very easy. Just do this, create this a button, and once it confirms that you're a human, you're just going to create a tournament. You can name your tournament whatever you want. I've got a bunch of names there. Your contact will be whatever your email is, if that's what you want to do. You can also go by your Discord name, and then you can have your Discord server here. Your start date can be whatever you want. It actually lets you set it for time as well. So let's say you were going to have a 12 a.m. tournament start on the 27th. You would just need an end date. So let's say the 28th at 2 a.m., something like that, right? And then essentially you would just name this My Very Real Tournament. And then for my email, I'm just going to do my email. And then you would create tournament, right? That will take you to this next page. I already have a Jazzy Circuit Workshop Training Template tournament. I haven't done anything else other than just create the event. This is now the next page. Now, if you have come from Challenge, this doesn't make any sense to you because you're like, what is this? Like, what do I have to do here? Well, fortunately, there are some notifications that will pop up to try and help newfound bracket runners or first-time bracket runners in creating their page. So essentially, you would just go to the settings here, and then this is where you would go into setup, right? So like for details, this lets you know basically what your tournament is named, and then a short slug would be like a shortening of the URL. Every tournament has its own like actual URL. A short slug would be like Jazzy Workshop 3S, right? It will let you know if it's available, and then once it's set as that, now you can put in this URL to access this, and that's a real easy way of being able to get a URL that people can remember. As far as venue address, if you are hosting this at a physical location, which all the ranking events, at least the offline ones, are, you would put whatever you want here. So, oh man, I wish I knew the Game of Dreams. I think you can do. Can you search for it? Yeah, here we go. So it will give you the full address. Even if you just know the name of the venue, you can put it there. And then any sort of images that you want to do, your profile image, your banner image, all of this will be accessible. So this thing here is your profile image, and then your banner image will actually be on the actual tournament page that people first see when they go to your URL. As far as rules, you can just reference the Jazzy Circuit rules if this is going to be a Jazzy Circuit event. So you can link the Jazzy rule set here. Additionally, you can have anything else that you want listed here. Let's say it's not a Jazzy tournament and you want to do like a single elimination, and you are allowing for some unconventional things, right? Like you want judgment to not be in effect, or you don't want to disallow game breaking bugs. You want the game to be chaotic, and you just want to You just want to have like a fast and quick fun tournament, right? You can have all of that here. Markdown is essentially what StartGG uses in order to sort of it's like JavaScript or like very basic coding. It's the language that it uses in order to sort of inform things like italics or bold text, paragraphs, etc. So it's essentially just formatting, right? You can preview your Markdown. So let's say I were to put something in here, and then if you need help formatting, it actually will teach you how to do that within here. You can customize your text with Markdown, and it shows you basically a quick rundown on how to use Markdown to get the text the way that you want. It's pretty informative, so it's nice that they added that feature there. I actually remember when this was not an option, so it's very fortunate that they added that. As far as registration settings, this will go through all of the options for your event. Basically, when people can sign up, if it's a free tournament or not. You can do venue fee, multiple choice. So let's say it's a multi-day event. You can have it to where venue fee covers both days. You can have a competitor pass. You can have a spectator pass, etc. Right? You can even go into the advanced settings to do multi-ticketing. So if someone wants to buy the competitor pass and also the spectator pass, they can do so. Require a shipping address would just basically force them to put in their address. So if you're worried about people signing up who may not be real for a free event in particular, you can sort of do this to sort of bypass that, make it a little bit more of a hassle for trolls to join your event. And then as far as contact info, this is up to the TO basically. If you want people's phone number, if you're in a venue that is 21 and up, for example, a bar, right? You can do a limit attendee by age, and then you would just set that to 21. Now anyone who is not 21 will not be allowed to sign up for your event. And this would require them having accounts on StartGG, right? So they would need to create their account, put in their birth date. I don't know that it goes as far as verifying through ID. I think it's pretty much just based off of the registered birth date. So that's one extra step to try and hassle people into compliance. And then here, limits events and groups. Let's say you're running part of a larger scale event and there are multiple events that are running and you want to limit how many people can enter. You can do that here. You can edit the event group settings here. There's all sorts of things that you can do here. Down here, you can enable your the requirements for people having to have a Twitch registered or a Discord registered. I think this is more for online events, but if you want it for your offline event, then more power to you. Attendee agreements. So a lot of people here will put in the FGC COC. It's basically a code of conduct that has basic language like don't hit anybody, don't abuse anybody, don't harass anyone. If you want to create a QR code for your event, this is where you can do this as well. You would enable this, and then you can generate one. And then the hashtag will be what you can add if you're throwing this event up on Twitter. So if I were to do hashtag Jazzy Workshop, that would be what gets added to this hashtag section here. All of this is very granular. You can even go into payment setup. If you want to take payments online, you can do USD, and it has all these other different currencies that you can add. You can do an organizer processing fee. I'm not a huge fan of that, but if that's what you need to do, let's say you have a door entry fee and you want to get it ahead of time for the venue, you're more than welcome to do that. I feel like most people are conditioned to paying most of these fees on site. But if you want to do it ahead of time and sort of control the number of people that are in the venue, let's say you have a hard cap of 64 players, right? You could sort of, again, force compliance by having this ticked and then having the base fee be $100, and then the percentage of that would be 5, so that $5 would be like the venue fee, right? And then it lets you know the processing for Stripe and PayPal charges. As far as other options that you can do, You can allow attendees to pre-register, then pay in person at the venue. Attendees will be marked did not pay in the attendees list. This is something that historically we've had issues with. What will happen is if you do not enable this initially and you try and do it after the fact, StartGG is very, very hard at doing things after the fact. Anything that you need to sort of retro fix. Let's say I didn't have this ticked when I created the event, and then the day of the event I tried to switch it over. Because the event is technically already happening, StartGG will sort of not allow you to do this anymore. And it's very difficult. It's very hard to work with. So I would highly recommend that all of your settings that you have as far as payments and registration, all of those terms and conditions and deadlines are all set prior to the day of your event. That would be like the biggest piece of advice that I could give anybody concerning the payment setup and the registration settings. Email settings. This is pretty much just for the TO. If you want email reminders, if you want to do email notifications, you can turn those on. Instructions, getting to the venue, additional notes. Let's say there's parking situations, or you're pretty fast and loose with your start time. All those things can be added here, and then you can send a test email to see how that looks. Transaction log is mostly just for the TOs. This will let you know who's paid, who's registered, who has yet to pay. And then the transaction log will show you, okay, so-and-so signed up at this date, they paid this amount. Block players. This is for anyone that you don't want showing up to your event. Like, let's say they're trying to register online. You're like, yeah, that person is banned from the venue, or they're banned from my events. Traditionally, I don't think we've ever had to enforce this, but every scene is different, and so it's just nice to know that you have this option if you need it. As far as attendees go, if you already have people that are registered, you will see them here. Additionally, you can also add an attendee. If you have their name, you can add somebody like David here. I can have his venue fee, any notes that I want, and then I can add the attendee here. Once he's added, it should show that he's in this pool of... It should show. Let's see if I have to refresh. Oh, maybe not. This is what I'm talking about with Start, man. It's okay. It says that he's attending. Oh, it's probably because I didn't have him sign up for any games because I don't have a game yet. That is the other thing too. So with your tournament page, you would assume that, hey, I'm running a Third Strike tournament. How does it know that I'm running a Third Strike tournament? So here you would go to create event under events, and you would do Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, and then you would click on the platforms, right? Arcade, PC would be like Fightcade. You could do Xbox 360 if you're doing OE, PS4 if you're doing 30th Anniversary Collection, etc., right? So let's say I have Arcade, custom format. We're going to do 1v1, head-to-head, offline event, and then the address. I would hit continue there. Event cost is $0. Player cap is going to be 64 people. Event registration start date. What this means is when people can start signing up for your event. Let's say you're trying to promote it well ahead of time. Let's say you've got 6 months before your event is supposed to start, or 6 days. It doesn't matter really. Just so long as you know when exactly you want to start promoting it. Let's say I want to start promoting it tomorrow. I will do 26 at noon. And then the cutoff, right? So this would be the day of the event. Let's say I want to run it on the last Sunday of February. That'd be the 22nd. And similarly, the cutoff is going to be noon, right? What that means is on February 22nd at noon, no one can register anymore. I can add people manually. That's still an option as a TO that I can do, but nobody can register for the event. Event publishing, public or admins only. Essentially, if I were to do this, it would make it to where only admins can see any of the publishing for this specific event. As we get further into this, you'll understand what that means. Right now, I know that sounds confusing if you're not familiar with this process, but if I were to have it be public, that means that the event is public to anyone, basically, right? It's not hidden to just the people that are running the event. The event registration visibility. I know you guys have seen this before, where you sign up for something like Frosty Faustings or Texas Showdown, and you want to see who else signed up for this event. And for whatever reason, you just can't see the pools yet. You know that people have signed up. You know that this is an event that's definitely happening. You paid money to it. A bunch of people told you that they're going, and just for whatever reason, you cannot see the pools yet. That's because it is hidden, right? Only the admins of the bracket page and people with the appropriate permissions will be able to see who those people are. In addition to the event as well. You might not see the Third Strike event that I have here if I have that hidden, right? And so I can create another if I want to. Let's say I want to create one for Marvel. I can do a Marvel 2 bracket, and I can set it up just like this with all the same information. And so essentially, what I want to do is call this Jazzy Third Strike event. And so anything with an asterisk is something that is mandatory for you to be able to submit and publish. Once this event is live, right, I will now I should be able to get it, right? I think I have to publish the event as well. Once I have this, I can go to dashboard, I believe. There it is. Tournament is unpublished. Publish homepage to allow non-admins to see it, right? It needs event details, right? Once you get far enough in the process, this tournament page is still not live, meaning that if people were to go to this URL, they still wouldn't be able to see everything. And so what I need to do is I need to go down here to edit the details before I can do that, right? So I'm going to edit Markdown. I'm just going to keep this as is. You can edit these settings here. There are currently no events for this tournament. Let me do here. Where is this not public? Edit, delete. No. This should allow you to do this. Deadlines, registration. These are just general more options that you have. Yeah, this should be. Let's see. Let's go to dashboard. Update the tournament description on your homepage. Okay. That's what I have to do. So tournament description.
I like to just change like one letter.
Yeah.
just to be able to do it.
This is a Jazzy Third Strike tournament. There we go. Save. Can I publish now? Start. I can. Okay. Now that the event is, I guess, fully finished, I can publish the event. Public. Brackets and seating are visible. I can change the options here. Seating is visible, but the brackets are hidden. Brackets and seating are hidden. So you have multiple options here, depending on which one that you want. Let's do seating visible, but brackets are hidden. I'll save that there. Hide brackets. Again, you get to choose what you want here, so I'm just going to publish this. Public. Registration cannot be published until homepage is published. So let me publish this homepage. Discoverable. So the reason why this is important is there is a feature. I believe this is what you need. There's a feature within StartGG itself for TOs where once you have a tournament with a game that is viable for a league, you should receive a notification from Start that informs you that your event is applicable for this specific league, right? So for this one in particular, we're trying to make sure that it can get added to Jazzy, and it will let you know, like, hey, your event can get added to the Jazzy Circuit if you would like. And if that's what your goal was, then that's perfect, because you would just click on that notification. Hopefully it does it here. With Start, my fingers are always crossed. So let's see if I do this, publish. Okay. Let's see if it will do it now. Your events. I don't know.
You might gotta refresh my G.
Let's do this.
If that doesn't work, another option you have is also to visit the Jazzy start page, which would be start.gg/J7-ranking. There should be a button there you can click as well to apply. I believe at the very tippity top.
There it is. Apply for league. And it will let you know your eligible event. Select event you would like to apply. Must be discoverable. See publishing settings for them to show in the league. Okay, so I was correct. Yeah. Basically, it has to be discoverable in order for them to be able to find out which one of your events are applicable, right? So that we hit continue. Once you've acknowledged to start TOS, you would submit. And then from there, on our end at Jazzy, we get to basically review if there's any sort of parameters that are missing, or if there's any sort of things that are not in compliance with Jazzy. We could reach out to those individual TOs via their contact information, and sort of figure out, what needs to get changed or configured or slightly altered in order to be eligible for the Jazzy Circuit. We really don't require a crazy amount of things. It's pretty straightforward if you're running a tournament. But as far as setting up a start page goes, that's pretty much what I had. Is there anything, Jose or Venka, that you guys want to add about Start?
So I want to talk very briefly about something you kind of went over very fast in the beginning, which is that Start is a kind of a confusing website. It's got a lot of excellent features that are going to empower you as a TO, as your career as a TO goes on and on. That being said, as you see from our workshop here, even very experienced organizers can have some issues navigating it. It's got so many different confusing ways to publish this or unpublish that, or maybe your event is published but your tournament's not published, or your tournament is published but your event is not published. Could be sometimes that you run into issues with, for instance, event start time. Maybe your tournament has a start time of 7 p.m., but maybe your event has a start time of 6 p.m. That's going to cause pretty big problems because your event can't start before your tournament does. I just kind of want to get you guys sort of prepared mentally as you play with this website to appreciate that what Start calls a tournament is kind of like your... It's really confusing. I'm pretty sure they did it backwards, in my opinion. But the tournament is the event.
Yes.
So what I mean by that is that if you're going to, let's say, your local and you have 4 games running, let's say you have 4 brackets, the tournament is the local itself. And then in StartGG's terminology, the event is each individual game. So you're going to create a tournament first and then add events to that tournament for each individual bracket you want to run. And that kind of is one of the more confusing things about Start. In general, on top of that, you also have the sometimes, again, conflicting settings between the tournament and the events that are part of that tournament. So if you guys have problems, definitely hit us up and we can definitely give you some advice. Very, very often the problem is that there's some kind of mismatch between the tournament's configuration and the event's configuration. Aside from that, I wanted to mention that although this, this seminar is not really meant to address specifically Jazzy ranking events, the goal is to have this be applicable for, Tekken or Street Fighter 6, etc. If you do want to look at our requirements for a ranking event, they're public on jazzycircuit.org. You can visit our website or ask us. We'll definitely help you out with regards to getting things set up the way you want it to get set up and helping you, figure out all the third strike rules and that kind of a thing. But yeah, I think that, also one that Katie mentioned is that challenge, guys. Challenge. If you're a brand new organizer and maybe you're not ready yet to run a big event on StartGG, check out Challenge. Don't sleep on it. It's a great platform. It's very simplistic. It's much more simple than Start. You can run a very clean bracket there. And, I definitely would advise any upstart TO who's thinking about running an event for the first time to maybe look at Challenge first as a way to get a bracket running with your friends, run a little tournament, and maybe do all some prizes at your local. But yeah, thank you, Katie. That was a very informative little Start GG walkthrough there.
Yeah, and I started with Start specifically because it's so complicated. Because I wanted to juxtapose Challenge to show you guys that it's literally like it's like a few buttons on Challenge. Like all that navigating that I had to do on Start is not extremely user friendly. And I've created literally dozens of tournaments on Start. It's always sort of a confusing process for me because the permissions and the functionality of Start have changed over time, and so there are some settings that need to get tweaked, or there's often conflicting settings, like Venka had mentioned, between the tournament and the event itself. And all of those things, we've sort of had to learn as we go, because there is no real sort of foundational resource that people can point to be like, hey, if you've never used Start GG before, just go check out this one video. It's got literally all the answers, right? Every experience will vary. So if you're running a Tekken bracket, it may not be exactly the same as running a Third Strike bracket. It may not be the exact same as running like a Marvel bracket or a Melee bracket, right? All those things are going to be very different in terms of what you need to set it up for your event. But that's why I just kind of went through like a generalized process. I know Third Strike the most because of that's the one that I've run the most. But your experience will vary depending on the game and the type of event that you want to do, right? I didn't even get into like whether it should be double or single elimination or Swiss format or any of those things, right? That was sort of just like a very, very high overview of what it's like to try and set something up on Start. Now, given that we just did that on Start, this is your dashboard when you log on to Challenge, and this is what it looks like. And so the very first thing that you're going to do is when you create a tournament, you can just click on Tournament there. Very real tournament. We'll keep that URL there. This is for training purposes only. And then game, again, we're going to keep it. Oh, I got to do this. Street Fighter 3. There it is, Third Strike. Then you can do like a single stage tournament, two stage tournament. You can decide whether it's going to be single elimination, double, round robin, Swiss, free for all leaderboard, etc. We're going to do good old double elimination. This is a very interesting choice I don't think I've ever used before. You can do break ties with placement matches. This is mostly for single elim tournaments. A lot of times what will happen is that you will need, depending on the number of entrants, you will need to have like these tiebreaker sort of matches in order to get people to have like a clean 1 through 8. Grand finals, winners bracket finals has to be defeated twice by the losers bracket. So this is basically just for like reset. And then registration, provide a list of participants, host a sign-up page. This will allow you to ask custom questions to your participants. So this is an option if you wanted to do additional things, like if you want people to sign up with their Discord handle or their Twitch handle, right? Registration free, we're going to do free here. Start time, again, you get to basically pick, let's go for the 30th at 8 p.m. You can do predictions and voting. This isn't really important at all unless you want, I guess, people to do predictions and voting. What this is basically, let's say you have a bracket set up, and at a certain point, player A is going to be playing player B. People can vote on who they think the winner of that match will be. And so you can even limit it to whether that's only in the winner's bracket or if that's applied to the entire bracket. And then you can do these experimental features. I really haven't messed with any of this stuff, so I can't speak to the veracity of like whether this is worth it or not. But one thing that is kind of cool is this allow specific countries for your registration, right? So if you're running an online event, you might want to check this box in order to get people specifically from the United States, for example, or Canada or Mexico to be able to be the only ones that can sign up for your event. If we go to save and continue here, we now have this event here. You can register for the event. You can go to standings for the event. But really what you're going to want to go to next is participants, right? And so what I can do is I can bulk add a bunch of people. Let's add Venkabot, MrPart2. And so you'll notice I'm hitting enter every time. So on every line, every new line, I'm going to enter another person. Synapse. Let's do 3Venge. Let's do Bunch. Let's do I'm Borderline. And so we'll just bulk add them. And now, if I wanted to go into seeding, which I didn't even get to on start because it was just way too much, right? On start, there's a whole nother section for this. There's a weighted seeding. You can seed however you want manually, but like it's a much more involved process. Here, I can just click and drop, right? If I just wanted to move people around as I saw fit, I could do that here. I can even do like random seeding where I can just shuffle, right? This is just a random seeding. If I wanted to do, if I wanted to edit somebody's name, let's say somebody drops out, right? Let's say Venkabot dropped out of the match or out of the tournament and I needed to replace him before it starts, I can do that. Let's say I misspelled somebody's name, right? Let's say I called him Venkobot. And he's like, actually, dude, it's got an A instead of an O. Oh, my bad, dude. And then you can fix it that way, right? This is just so much more user-friendly. You can even have substitutions. You can delete players if you want. And so what will happen is you'll go down here to a bracket now. And so this is sort of what it looks like. It's very easy, so much so that, jumping into start after this feels like a whole different universe. But if I just wanted to run the tournament, I can just start it now. I can just hit start tournament, and now we can start recording matches. I will go to this report scores button, and I will go down to whatever it is that I need to put here, submit a score there, and now we're basically live, right? It is that easy on challenge. On start, if I wanted to report scores, if I wanted to go into any of that stuff, let's go to my event, just for comparison's sake. I am a human. Please let me go. You would go down here to your settings for your event. And down here, you'll see seed generator. You'll see bracket setup. You'll see polls and seeding. You'll see scheduling. You'll see conflicts, stations and streams. All this stuff is actually super useful. I hand waved it earlier just because it's in a different section. And it's a little bit more complicated to set up. But if you're running a large scale event, if you're running an event that requires multiple phases, has multiple pools, has multiple games, is happening across multiple days, this is so useful for you. You can add phases to an event. You can go into seed generator. If I had people signed up for it, I could just start seeding them here. If I wanted to go to pools and seeding, I can seed by pool. And you can jump through events here. If I had multiple events, you can look at the bracket. And so this is an easier way of managing a large scale event. If you were to try and do it on challenge, inversely, it would be way harder. You would have to do way more steps. Luckily, start, because they're used so universally. They've added all of these features for large scale events to try and make it easier on them to be able to control these hectic schedules that are running concurrently and all these events that are happening all at the same time, often with players that are participating in multiple games. And so I poo-poo start just because it's not very user-friendly, but on the back end, from a TO perspective, it is so helpful and so useful to have all of this stuff. Prior to start doing this, everything was run through challenge and it was very difficult to set up. You can do those same sorts of things on challenge, but it's a lot more setup than it is on here. On here, everything is sort of broken down for you in sections, and so you can even go to stations and streams. Let's say you had a bracket. I can create stations here. I'll do number of stations. We'll do 4 stations. Let's say we're at the Jazzy event. And we'll do all phases, right? I'm going to create a station here. And so essentially what this does now is I can name each station. Let's say I have the main stream, I have the side stream. Let's say I have another stream from a different streamer. I would name it that stream, and then another one from a different streamer, right? So let's say Bunch was there. We would have Casa Bunch as one of them. We would have Logan Arcade is another one. And so you can name those. And the reason why that's helpful is if you're at a large scale event, what you can then do is if you're trying to queue up all of your matches ahead of time so that you know what's already on stream. Say your bracket's already seated, everybody's already checked in, you're all ready to go, and you just want to make sure that your brackets are running fast. What you would do is you would assign each match a station, right? This isn't necessarily just for streams. If you have 5 setups, you can have setup 1 through 5 as your stations. And what that then informs is, hey, if you guys don't want to have to follow along with the TOs themselves and you're only interested in what match is happening for yourself, you can check this out if they've assigned you a station, right? So let's say your first match is on station 2. Then the winner of your match and the next match will play on station 3. The winner of that will play on station 4, etc., right? This is so people can sort of start queuing things up. And this is very helpful with the fact that if you're running a large-scale event with multiple things that are happening all concurrently, it can get very chaotic tracking people down, trying to get them to show up and play their matches, or trying to get somebody to stay there for a sec. Like, hey, you're about to play, I promise. Don't go anywhere. You turn your back, you finish a match, and the second you turn around, they're gone. And you're like, where did they go, right? And it's because they simply weren't aware of where they were going to play or, when they were going to play. They knew they were playing soon, but when that was, they weren't sure. So these stations are great with queuing things up, right? You can tell people, hey, check out the station designations on the bracket. This is where you will be playing. And then they have a rough idea of like, hey, I have enough time to go run to the restroom or I have enough time to go grab a drink or something. I will come right back and then I will be ready for my match, right? This is more helpful in the pool phase of a match versus like a smaller venue where, if you're running a local and there's only like 16 players there, you only have 2 setups, right? Everyone knows where the action's happening. It's not that many people you have to juggle, and everyone should generally be within the vicinity of the 2 setups. So this is more for larger scale events. For the purposes of people who are running brackets for the first time at a local, I don't think you'd have to worry about any of this. But I wanted to point it out because there's a common issue that I've seen with a lot of tournaments. As someone that has run a ton of larger scale events, the one thing that I see from bracket runners in particular is they're so tunnel visioned on just the one event and the one match that needs to be going at one time, that maybe to start a bracket, they'll have if they have 8 stations, they will tell you, hey, stations 1 through 8, these are all the matches that are happening, go play. And then there won't be any TOing that happens until those matches start to end. That to me is a grave mistake. If you are on a time crunch, or if you're just trying to run a tournament in a timely fashion, you don't want people to leave, you don't want people to walk away and wander and go do other things and get lost, and then you have to go find them, and then you have to DQ somebody because you couldn't find them and they just lost track of time. All that stuff is very avoidable to me, because what you can do is you can just start queuing people up. Hey, don't go anywhere because you're up next on this station, right? You're going to play the winner of this, or you 2 guys are going to play as soon as they're done. Don't go anywhere because as soon as they get up, you guys sit down and play, right? And what that then does is it creates sort of workflow. That workflow is so pivotal for large events that it will actually help you catch up if you have delays, right? Let's say you're running a tournament and for whatever reason, the stream is taking longer to set up, the internet was down, or you have to change out a stick or some buttons, something happened, and you now are faced with a delay that you couldn't have possibly prepared for. These things happen in tournaments, right? As the bracket runner, if you can start queuing stuff up, you can actually recover and get ahead of it, right? You can, instead of losing time and being behind, you can actually start queuing stuff up to make it to where, hey, we actually didn't lose any time at all in that. We were able to salvage it by just queuing stuff up. And the other thing is it keeps people engaged, right? If people are not engaged, they will wander. That is universally true across every game and every type of player in every scene. If people are not engaged and they feel like they have a ton of time to be able to go and wander, they will wander. And so if you as a TO don't have any bracket runners that are actively engaging with the participants and the players, it can get very hard wrangling people, particularly if you're in a large hotel or if you're in a big venue and they have areas that they can go to. People will go get food, people will go and use the restroom, they'll go take a phone call or a smoke break or what have you, right? I think it's very important that people sort of see the value in being able to queue stuff up ahead of time. Now, granted, you're not going to be able to always do that because tournaments are chaotic, especially once they start, especially if they're large scale. But I do think for those of you guys that are starting to sort of go in towards things like auto qualifiers or like majors, right? Like let's say you're going to go run a bracket for a major for the first time. The important part is to sort of stay ahead of the curve as much as you can. And so that's just looking ahead to be like, hey, I don't see this person in the area and I know that they're going to play soon. Let me send somebody to go find them or let me go find them, right? If it's something that you can get ahead of, what that will do is it will cut down on dead time, which is really what you don't want when you have a ton of people playing and a ton of people moving around all at the same time, right? And then let's say that you move through a bracket so fast that you were able to sort of blast through ahead of time. That's even better because what that then does is it allows you more time to get matches on stream or more people that can get casuals in because you can open up setups for casuals. And so those things are heavily important for the larger scale events. I know for people that are particularly going to play in an auto qualifier event, a large draw to the player that's traveling out there and spending all this money to go out to your venue and your event is to try and obviously compete and get the auto qualifier spot. But in addition to that, they want to grind, man. These players want the experience of going to a new scene and playing with this scene's best players or their strong players or just getting experience in general. And so if you can get more casuals for them, that adds more value to the event for them. And if there's anything that you can do in terms of running a bracket that can open up casuals faster, that would be like the one giant piece of advice that I would offer in that regard. Venka or David, do you guys have anything to add in terms of anything I just commented on?
Yeah, it's I think it's all very good advice. Obviously, running a large event is a lot of juggling. It's something that we're grateful to have multiple TOs help us with when we're running larger events. But as someone who recently ran a ranking event here in Michigan, it was 17 players in a pretty small little spot. Even then, when you've got a lot of setups, which you got to be grateful for, and you have a lot of players, it can be a lot to juggle. But I think that as long as you are, one piece of advice that I got from my friend Ryan, S.C.R.M, at the Jazzy finale last season was keep a cool head. Keep a cool head, stay relaxed, try and stay on top of things. I think you made a very good point, Katie, about tunnel vision and how that can be a huge problem when you're trying to run an event with lots of setups and lots of players. Just try to, keep touching base with your players hither and thither about the various setups, and you'll be okay. Another thing I kind of want to talk about, I'm not sure if this is in your agenda, Katie. Maybe it is, and if so, I'll shut up. But I think that we should maybe talk a little bit about, at some point tonight, seeding, right? Considering the fact that I think some organizers here are so new to organizing events, they might not even really have a strong idea of what seeding is like or what the function of it is. If that's not in the, if it's not going to be in the agenda tonight, I wouldn't mind talking a bit about, the importance of seeding and basically what are the considerations, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think seeding is a pretty important aspect of tournament creation and bracket running in general. That is definitely on the agenda, and I think in particular to Third Strike, I feel like I have a pretty good feel for how seeding is generally supposed to go, or at least something that is not egregious that people would disagree with outright. I do think there is room for asking questions, right? So if you're someone who isn't familiar with the players that are participating in your event, or if you're someone who doesn't have that much experience and all you've seen are like Twitter clips and clips on YouTube and stuff, and you're like, wow, this player must be really good. It's very hard to get context when people are just throwing up highlights of themselves. I think that's something that Jazzy has definitely been great with as far as being a resource for people in terms of seeding. We have helped dozens of tournaments in the past with the seeding, and if that's something that you're unfamiliar with, It's definitely something that we're willing to help out with. But I think it's also one of those things that's very context based. If you have a bunch of players that are sort of in a similar skill range, and they all have sort of similar experience, it can get very hard to decide, well, who do you seed based off of skill, right? It's also something that's very different based off of large scale tournaments. Large scale tournaments, you have things like region conflicts that you're trying to avoid. You have things like time constraints that you have to work with. If somebody has to play in a third strike pool that's happening from noon to 2, but they're also playing across the hotel in a Granbull bracket from that same time frame, then it becomes very difficult to navigate. Okay, maybe instead of having them in this pool, let's try and figure out a time that I can get them where they don't have a scheduling conflict, right? One of the things that you can do if you're in that situation is reach out to the TO of the other event and be like, hey, I have this player who's also playing in your event from this time to this time. Is that something that you can work with, or is that something that I need to shuffle around with? And I think just having that line of communication with the other TOs kind of helps in figuring out what's the best way to sort of navigate someone who's entered multiple events. But also it's one of those things where with regional exceptions, you don't want to have somebody who rode with their homie playing first round, right? Like they traveled cross country, or they took a flight together cross country, and first round they got to play each other. It's like, well, this is a local that we traveled for, right? That's not what they came for. And so you're trying to avoid that. I also think in terms of regional events like an auto qualifier, you're going to have heavy representation of whatever the region is. So let's take Chicago, for instance. If you're having a Chicago tournament like Frosty, for example, you're going to have a lot of Chicago players. You will also have players from other areas that are participating. And so what you're really trying to do is kind of parse out how many of the scheduling conflicts and regional conflicts you can avoid, and which ones are completely unavoidable, right? Like if somebody has to play someone that is in their same region, maybe not someone that they play all the time, or someone that's not in their direct training circle, or maybe not even from the same arcade. That stuff is going to happen. So it's not completely avoidable all the time, but it's something that you're trying to work towards avoiding as much as possible. In terms of how you gauge player skill, I think that's also something that you get over time. In general, I think it's a good rule of thumb to recognize like the tournament winners, the dudes that typically win tournaments probably should get seeded pretty high, right? If there are multiple tournament winners in your bracket, that's one, fantastic, because that means it's going to be a good tournament. But two, it's also it's one of those things that sort of makes your job easier. If everyone is a tournament winner, like you got 8 tournament winners, that's your top 8, right? And then however you see that is sort of subjective as well, right? This player tends to beat that player a little bit more, or this player just had a great showing at another event, so maybe their seeding is bumped up. I think those are all considerations. If you know personal history, if you know that they've never played each other, right? And you don't have any context for that. Or if you've seen this person on a stream, or if you know that they play online together all the time and they generally win, or they go back and forth. Those are all things to take into consideration when it comes to seeding. And I will say, just from my experience, this is not true of everybody, but just in my experience, if your idea is that you're going to create the perfectly seeded tournament and everyone will be happy, you can just eliminate that thought from your brain immediately. There is almost, I think, for every large scale event I've ever seeded, there's guaranteed at least 4 dudes that are not happy with their seed. And it's not a personal slight to them. It's just because they don't understand. Maybe there's some conflicts that needed to be avoided, and that's why they got the seed that they did. Or maybe they're a player that is not very well known, and so that will affect their seeding as well. Hey, if nobody knows who you are or how good you are, it's very hard to seed you high, right? Like the justification isn't there because there's no context.
Or
seeding...
also, it could also literally be just a case of simple human error, simple mistake, and that's something that I think that I wish more players would be more open-minded to. And what I mean by that is that it's true that it could be an unknown player, but it could also be a player that actually is known in their local scene. And so they feel entitled to a higher seed than what they got. And it could just very well be that you have 4 guys seeding the event and none of them knew who that guy was. That's just the way it is sometimes. And it creates issues where sometimes, basically my point is that, honestly, sometimes players get seeded lower than they probably should be. It happens all the time. But the reality is that that's just going to be unavoidable in any tournament. So, when you're seeding your first event or your 100th event, be prepared, like Katie says, for some feedback and be open to it. Sometimes players are not necessarily the most, let's say, tactful regarding how they give their feedback, but you will always benefit from it. I think that we've discussed before, me and Katie and some other friends on the Jazzy team, that sometimes the players that are saying the wildest stuff, either to you directly or on social media, it can be very frustrating to deal with. At the same time, that's some of the most important things to listen to, because if one person is saying it, then other people are thinking it, and it can help you improve your events if you're kind of listening to that.
Yeah, and then piggybacking off that, actually, that's fantastic advice. Is if you don't know, ask somebody, right? Like, as the TO, there is no shame in being like, hey, I have no idea who this guy is, but I've heard he's good. And then just sort of get some feedback from people that may know him, or people that you trust, whose opinions you trust. If there's somebody who has a ton of experience on your in your scene, and they have some good insight on these players, that's something that you can use as a resource. I will say where you could get into trouble, and this is something to take into into your sort of like preparation, is if you are planning on being in the event yourself, that's where the seeding can sort of get a little dicey. Generally, it is considered sort of like a faux pas. Not that it's not, it's like it's disallowed, but it's I guess it's considered a faux pas, or at least it was back in the day. If you're participating in your own event, and you're also seeding it, and you happen to give yourself a really high seed, that looks a certain type of way to people, particularly if that seeding seems suspiciously high. I don't think anyone would care if you seeded yourself lower. I don't think anyone would be like, oh no, man, this guy's seeded himself. Like, I don't think that's a complaint that I've ever heard of, but I do know of situations where players who were participating in a tournament, were asked to help with seeding, or were asked to outright seed the event, and they ended up giving themselves a pretty favorable seed. And so those are things as a TO that you'll kind of want to look out for. One of the examples that I'll give you is if you're having someone help you seed an event, and you just happen to notice this guy's on one side of the bracket, and like everyone else that's good is on the other side of the bracket. That looks pretty fishy to me. Let's try and shake things up a little bit here to make it a little bit more evenly distributed in terms of skills. That's sort of what you're doing, right? Is you just want to pay attention to where there might be some suspicious activity in the seeding. Coincidentally enough, you will also kind of hear feedback from players if you make these pools public, or these brackets public to the event. Prior to the event happening, you will often get feedback from players. Players will let you know, like, hey, this seeding is whack. I do not think this is seeded correctly. They'll let you know. Players will tell you. But also, if it's just you and your local scene, and this is your first time doing it, you can solicit their advice as well. You can reach out to them. You're like, hey guys, this is my first time doing it, so like, take this with a grain of salt, but what do we think about the bracket, right? And if the general consensus is, yeah, this bracket looks fine, then I think you're pretty good to go. But if everyone is like, hey, this is egregiously wrong and it needs to be rectified, at that point, then you can sort of, take into consideration their feedback, and be like, okay, well, how would you seed it? Or which are the most egregious seeds that need to be changed? And then based off that feedback, you can sort of adjust accordingly. I will just iterate again, you will not make everybody happy. Everybody will never be happy. And it is what it is. But I think in terms of just as fair as possible to everybody, if you are genuine in your effort in that, then like I think most people will be chill about it. Most people will be pretty cool about it. And that's really what you're trying to appeal to, is just the majority, right? Like if there's the one person who's just like, yeah, I didn't like my seed, I'm pretty upset about it. I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry about that, but try to seed it as fairly as I could, right?
Yeah.
I think most people are pretty cool about that.
So do you mind if I address some of the questions I'm seeing in the chat?
Yeah,
Very
please.
briefly. Yeah, so one that came up that was very interesting was from my friend Jojo. He says, what do you mean exactly when you say queue things up? So this is back when we were talking about running bracket and finding stations and stuff. I think what Katie meant by that, Jojo, is that it's part of the engaging with the players. I thought Katie made a very brilliant point about how if you don't engage with players and keep them like interested, they're going to wander off. And one thing that I find in my experience to be extremely useful for keeping players in one spot is to say to them, hey, when this setup is done, sit down and play, right? Well,
Yeah.
That's basically the point of queuing up is so that you're not waiting until one event is done to give instructions to other players regarding where they should expect to play. And that creates expectations in them that allow them to make their plans better, allow them to plan their bathroom breaks better, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's very important when you're running any kind of bracket, either online or in person, that when you have a limited number of setups, you always will, it'll be one setup or two setups or up to 4 or 5, et cetera, if you're lucky. Make sure that you're not just kind of waiting for one game to finish before you approach some other players who are waiting and let them know, hey, you're going to be up soon, right? Here's what you can plan on regarding your upcoming set. You can sit down and play here. You're going to be waiting for these guys to finish up, or even just something as simple as, hey, you're going to be playing up next. Something that simple, creating that queue, the queuing up of the players, it allows them to have better expectations. It'll let them help you regarding staying in the area when they need to be in the area. And of course, it's not going to always work because players are going to be players.
Yeah.
But it's a huge help in my experience.
Yeah, and I think in general, it's in terms of creating a queue, right? It's just being in communication with the participants, right? If they know when they're going to play and they know who they're going to play, I think that helps, right? One is good, but I think both is optimal. So let's say, for example, you know that that Face NC is going to be playing N Cruz. You see Face NC, but you do not see N Cruz. And you know this match just got started, so there's going to be a while before he plays. You can go up to Face NC and be like, hey man, you're going to play N Cruz. I don't know where he's at, so if you could find him or tell somebody to find him, or you can send a bracket runner to do this, right? Like, hey, go find N Cruz. Let him know that he's about to play. Then what that lets them do is it lets them know, like, hey, I'm going to play this guy, so when I see them and they're headed towards the setup, I'll head towards the setup as well. And that's sort of, it prevents a lot of things in terms of like dead time. And what I mean by dead time is like when a match is finished and nobody's playing on the setup. And when you're a player, and I can speak to this as a player, it drives me insane. As a player, if I see that I haven't played in 20 minutes and there are 2 open setups and nothing is happening on those setups, I'm losing my mind. I'm like, what is happening? Who has control of this bracket, right? It's very frustrating. It's for a player perspective.
I think that another thing that you kind of grazed over there is that there's another technique I want to kind of put you guys on game regarding, which is that if you have a player and their opponent is nowhere to be found, you can say to that player, hey, listen, Face, I can't find N Cruz right now, or I'm looking forward to your match, but because I don't know where he is right now, I'm going to have these 2 play, right? You'll be after them. That kind of move can save you so much time in a tournament rather than waiting to find players all the time if they're wandering around or getting drinks or going to the bathroom. I watched some online events, and shout out to all the people that are organizing online events. It's such a gracious service to the community. At the same time, I do kind of feel as though sometimes we're spending too much time waiting for players who are like AFK when we have 2 players that could be playing.
Yes.
So when you're talking about the creating of a queue for the setups, whether they're physical or virtual, part of it is letting people know in advance that they're going to be playing. But another part of it is being prepared to be flexible so that we don't have all this downtime. It's going to affect the experience for the players who are waiting around. Likewise, the viewers, right? If they're watching a stream and they're just kind of have dead air, or we have commentators talking to try to fill time while we wait to find a certain player who's missing, when we have other sets that could be played on that setup, there's pros and cons to kind of jumping ahead sometimes, but it's something you have to keep in mind to kind of keep things moving. And I find that can make things a lot smoother when you're running a tournament.
Yeah, and this speaks to one of the points on the agenda, right, of which matches to run. If you're super meticulous and you're somebody who has stations set up ahead of time and you've queued everybody up and you're doing everything accordingly and you have done your due diligence and you are super, you're super ahead of the curve, something can still go wrong, right? A setup can go down, a player can go missing, or someone wants to play on stream and they're insistent. Hey, man, I really need to play on stream. Or you're trying to get somebody to play on stream who hasn't played on stream due to an oversight or whatever happened, right? These are all things that will definitely happen at some point. It might not be your first event or your second event, but you run enough events and, these issues are things that are, you're guaranteed to run into. And so one of the things that I wanted to touch on as well is, which matches to choose. Venka makes a great point in terms of, hey, man, I have these two people that aren't playing and they could play right now instead of waiting for this match. Well, if you're on a time crunch and it's one of those things where, we'll go really behind if I just wait for this other person. Let's say it's an in-person event and they're currently playing in a different game in a different part of the hotel, then you'll wait, who knows how long. And so in order to avoid that, you can just stream the next match and then hope by the end of that match that player is available and then you can run the match that you intended to run. That's one option. I also think it's important to touch on how to queue up for online events. This is something that I don't think too many people try to do. And in particular, just because online events tend to be a little bit easier to manage in terms of time if they're not large events. If you've got like 12 people playing in a bracket, those 12 people are almost pretty much always engaged. But online has its own difficulties in terms of like you're not able to physically see if someone is at their computer. There are also connection issues. There are also issues with people's controls. They stop working. And so there's all sorts of things that can happen online that are a little bit more difficult to work with. But one of the ways that you can sort of be preventative in figuring things out ahead of time and actually queuing people up is to ask them to get into a match. If you're playing on Fightcade and these two players are about to play, you can be like, hey, before this next match is done, you two should just hop into a match. And then as soon as it's done, we'll jump over and we'll spectate your match and you guys can start, right? And I think that would go a long way towards being able to figure out those issues ahead of time. If you are trying to connect to somebody and you can't, and you don't do it right when your match is supposed to start, like you have some time to be able to figure that out. Maybe somebody needs to disconnect and reconnect. Maybe somebody needs to refresh. Maybe somebody needs to, restart their computer. Those are all things that you can do prior to their match starting. And I think that would help in sort of networking and figuring out and troubleshooting those issues prior to them, having to play on stream or something.
Yeah. So do you mind if I kind of move on a little bit here and address some of these other questions I see in the chat here?
Yeah.
Good questions. So one I read here is NRETG says here, how would you recommend on best avoiding in-city matchups / frequent head-to-head matches? So we did talk about this a little bit after you asked this question, but I kind of want to touch back on it very, very briefly. One thing that Katie brought up, I thought was really important, is outreach. And people in the chat also have said, ask for help, ask for advice. If you don't know a player, maybe ask, hey, anybody know who this guy is? So basically, I know this also ties into what Ryan said a little bit later, which is about seeding events and how the main concern for seed is always player skill, obviously. And the reason that is so that, and we also, I think that with some players being kind of newer to running events, this might not be totally obvious. But the reason you seed a tournament at all is because you want for grand finals to represent the two strongest players in the game. And if you don't seed your tournament, what's going to happen is that those two players might fight each other in round one, which will cause the stronger, the person who should be second place based on their skill, they get eliminated right away. And that creates issues regarding fairness, yes, but also for the experience for spectators. You don't want to have a grand finals that's going to be, the best player in the world versus a player that happened to have a really easy ride through the bracket who's actually a very weak player. That's very anticlimactic. But my point is, you're seeding based on skill so that we have a more fair tournament and one that's more fair to spectators. But also there's other considerations. You have to be considerate of the fact that if two players, like Katie pointed out, they flew all the way out here and they play each other every week at their arcade, it's not really fair to have them fight each other just because, even though they're the two weakest players in the event and you think, oh, well, they should, whatever the case might be, you want for people to fight new players. And there's multiple ways to go about it. Katie pointed out that one way is to make sure they don't fight each other in round one. And sometimes that's the best you can do because you have 120 players and it's not really reasonable to go through every single one of them and A, figure out who they are, B, know who they came with, and C, also try to somehow finagle the seed such that they don't fight each other until, round 3. It'd be great if there was a way to do that, but it's not really reasonable. So sometimes the best you can do is seed them so they don't fight each other in the very first round. So they're not just knock each other out right away. But if you can seed it such that they won't face each other by round 2, that'd be nice as well. If it's a smaller tournament, it might be reasonable for you to do that. But yeah, I think that in general, to answer your question, NRET, you basically, if you don't know who these players are, ask. And in fact, depending on the size of the event, I'm not sure you're running an event that's going to be 64 players or 4 players, like a little round robin or whatever. If you are running an event for the first time in your city and 8 guys show up and you don't know who they are, just say, hey, I'm NRET, nice to meet you. What do you know about the scene? Who's strong here? Who do you fight the most often? Maybe you'll find some insight that'll help you create a seed that is both more fun for the players and also, a more fair shakedown overall regarding how top 8 is going to play out. But yeah, also reach out for advice. Important, yeah.
Yeah, I also want to piggyback because this is something that S.C.R.M actually is kind of good at. There is an ability on S.C.R.M to click on a username, and I'll just this goes towards Neon's question as well. But if on S.C.R.M I go to oh yeah, of course. If I go to like the people that are attending my event and I click on a username, I should be able to see their information. Oh, maybe. Where did I go? I went to registration settings, I think, or attendees. Here we go. If I click on Venka's name here. Oh, well, it doesn't have it. What will happen sometimes?
My profile.
Yeah. What will happen sometimes is people will fill out the information in their profile, right? And that information will include hometown. It will also include past events they've registered for. It'll include their placements. And so that information is sort of available, provided that they have a history and they have their information filled out on S.C.R.M. So it's sort of useful in that regard. To have people sign up with registered S.C.R.M names as opposed to just entering everybody. If that's something that you want to do as a local TO, then God bless. But I think to make your life easier as the TO, if you require everyone to have a registered S.C.R.M GG like we do for Jazzy, it goes a long ways towards being able to manage people and figure out, okay, this person is from Michigan, this person is also from Michigan, they more than likely know each other or play each other, or at the very least, I don't have to have them play against each other first round, right? And like Venka mentioned, in larger events, it's almost impossible after the first round to be able to reasonably continue to seed people to avoid those conflicts. But I think a pretty reasonable expectation is at least for the first round to avoid all of those conflicts. After that, it becomes diminishing returns just because you're dealing with a smaller and smaller base of people. And so what you want to do in terms of at least the first round is just go through and sort of do your due diligence, ask people, try and look on S.C.R.M, see if you can find them on YouTube or on Fightcade or whatever. There's plenty of different areas that you can sort of explore, but I think the most the most important one would just be to ask somebody, particularly somebody who may have more knowledge of the scene than you. If you're a newer TO, just like, hey man, I don't know who this dude is, and I also I don't really know where they're from. I kind of looked them up on S.C.R.M, but it doesn't have any information. Do you know anything about them? Sometimes it will be like a completely unknown person, and you just won't have that information. So I don't think there is an unfair expectation there that you should know everybody. I think especially if it's like your first event and it's the first time this dude comes out to an event. It's completely reasonable that they may not have a favorable seating, and so that's okay. I think it's not something people will get upset about generally. If you have somebody, if you have somebody who's just crazy and they're like, "Hey man, I'm supposed to be," like, "Hey man, I'm sorry, dude, I just didn't know who you were," right? Like, my bad.
Sometimes you have an event like you're going to Frosty Faustings and you travel out there, and maybe you and your friend both picked up Third Strike yesterday, and you show up there and you end up fighting each other first round. It sucks. It happens. I see it all the time on social media. Hey, I'm a player who's not necessarily well known in this game, and I ended up getting seeded to fight my homie. Sometimes if you see that, guys, ask a TO. They might be able to help you if you spot it fast enough. But it's just a reality. Sometimes that ends up being the case. All you can do is the best you can possibly do as an organizer.
Yeah, and I think
unfortunate, but it is what it is.
I think particularly for like a large scale, like sometimes these bracket runners are running more than just one game, right? So it becomes a Herculean task for them to juggle all of those seedings. But typically, first round at least, and then after that, try your best is basically what I would say. Okay, in terms of the next question. Do you have any recommendation for TOs? Professor X asks, who wants to participate in their own event who are also bracket runners. Context is everything, man. If you're someone who is, and this is where it becomes pretty subjective, but if you're generally an honest person and you're really not trying to, tilt the bracket in your favor, where you're like, oh yeah, all these dudes I regularly beat, that's everybody on my side of the bracket, and then everybody who beats me is on the other side of the bracket. Like, you want to give yourself some adversity. You want to make sure that you are representing your skills in an honest way. If you know a dude is better than you, don't seed yourself higher than them. If you know a dude who always beats you is seated lower than you, that person's probably going to be upset because they're going to be like, hey man, I always beat you. Why did you seed yourself higher than me? Sometimes, especially for smaller events, you won't have anyone outside to seed an event for you. And so it's really just a subjective thing. But I think the important takeaway is if you're somebody with integrity who wants people to come back to your event and support your future events, I think it's pretty important that you seed yourself honestly to the best of your ability, and that you represent everybody fairly in a bracket, right? Because what can happen is if you're somebody who's nefarious and you're like, yeah, man, I'm going to seed myself top seed, I'm going to get all these Jazzy points. People are going to be like, hey, man, I don't think I'm going to come to your next event. I don't think I'm going to support you anymore. Which is totally fair of them. That's their prerogative, right? So I think if you are someone who is genuine and trying to build a community and sort of compete fairly against people, people generally support that, and people will generally champion for you, even if let's say somebody disagrees with your honest seeding. I think other people will probably back you up because they'll be like, hey man, I don't think it's that egregious, or I think he's fairly seeded. Just so long as you're trying to do right by yourself and the players and the event itself, I don't think you'll get into too much trouble. Again, I will heavily caveat everything with you can't make everybody happy all the time. But so long as you're making the genuine effort to sort of have a fairly represented, even bracket, I think most people appreciate that. And, it's one of those things too, where it's like, if there's only 8 dudes playing, and it's just the 8 of us, and it's a local, it is what it is, man. Like, you're not always going to be able to have somebody outside of the event seed your event for you.
Yeah, so I also think this is a really interesting and important topic. I hope you guys don't mind if I share my own insight a little bit. But my immediate answer to this question, which was put forward very frankly, is do you have any recommendations for TOs who want to participate in their own bracket? My number one piece of advice is don't. That's just number one, straight up.
I was going to say,
obviously it's unavoidable sometimes where, you're going to either have to play in your event because, for instance, with a Jazzy event, right, if you're running Jazzy stuff, maybe you're at 7 players otherwise, and you want to get those Jazzy points. So you have to get one more player, well, it's going to be you. That creates a situation where maybe you have to play. Or let's just be even more broad-minded and say maybe you just really, really, really want to play. Maybe you love the game that much and you desperately want to play. I do want to talk about that as, there are some things you can do to mitigate the issue a bit. But my number one thing that I want everybody, listening or watching or maybe even watching later on YouTube to kind of internalize is if you are running an event, there's many advantages to not playing. One of which is that no one's going to ever accuse you of seating yourself, in the wrong spot. And that can come at you, the culture we live in, you might think that, everyone thinks you're the most honorable and noble guy in the world. And all it takes is one misstep and now everybody thinks that you're freaking a heel, right? It happens all the time. So, I think that if you can avoid that kind of situation by simply not playing an event that you're running, that can be very helpful. The other thing is, if you're running an event, not playing it can make you a much better organizer.
100%.
You're able to handle queuing easier. You're able to do bracket running easier. Sometimes it really is worth taking that hit, even though you love the game, to say, hey, this is my event. I'm not going to play this time. And when I ran an event in Lansing a couple weeks ago, that's what I did. I would have loved to play 3S with all the guys, but I was running it, I was seeding it. I decided to step back and let the other players play, and I was going to focus on organizing it, and it saved me a lot of trouble that way. But I want to get back to the idea of, well, what if you, for whatever reason, you kind of have to play or you really want to play? One thing you can do is what Katie pointed out, what Professor X pointed out as well later on in this discussion, is get an outside party to help with the seating. And that's not going to always be possible, as Katie points out. It's not going to be necessarily, something you can easily do in certain communities. But if you can get someone, even if you have to do the seating yourself, but get someone else to sign off on it, that can go a long way to mitigating the potential backlash that can come from seating event you're playing in. If you have the receipt saying, oh yeah, well, although I did seed it, I just had, so-and-so and so-and-so, they signed off on it. If it's a smaller tournament, get your scenes help seeding it. Get everybody together and say, hey, here's the seed. What do you guys think? And then that can be something you can do before the tournament starts if it's a small enough event. But yeah, so I think that if you can avoid playing at all, that's the number one best piece of advice, is don't play in an event that you are yourself organizing, especially if you're involved in the seed. The other thing is, if you have to play in the event, then have somebody else seed it if possible. If nobody else can seed it, then at least you can get somebody else to sign off on it. And again, depending on the size of the event, it might even be sensible to just kind of, get people's thoughts on the seed before you even run the event. Just get everyone together and say, hey, what do you think about this? I'm playing it, I'm seeding it, I'm putting this spot. Is that okay with you guys? I think for a lot of small locals, that'd be very reasonable. But yeah, that's a great question, because we have seen throughout Third Strike's history that a lot of the greatest controversies have come from events where the organizer was seeding the event and also playing in it, and there were accusations that they seeded themselves too high. It happens all the time. And I've heard from multiple organizers, after it happens the first time, they go, okay, well, now I understand why in the future I'm not going to bother playing an event that I'm seeding. It's just too much trouble. I know organizers that have more or less retired from the game because they want to focus on running events rather than playing in them. And yeah, for the reasons of, again, the potential controversy that can arise from playing an event that you're seeding, as well as the fact that it's a lot of work to play an event that you're also organizing. It might be easier to just kind of step back and, again, let the other players play while you focus on hosting things. But yeah, great question. There are things you can do to mitigate that issue, but certainly, I want to stress, do not take it lightly. The amount of confusion and frustration that can arise in the short term and maybe even the long term from playing in an event that you are also organizing as someone who's involved in the seed. And certainly, this is sort of a neither here nor there if you guys are playing Tekken and stuff, but if you want to have Jazzy help with your seed, let us know. We'll help you with that. One of the functions we offer is to seed events. So, if you want to seed your local and then you want to say, hey, you can cry with seed all you want, but Jazzy, help me seed it. Talk to them about it. Then we'll talk to them. We'll talk to whoever wants to smoke. And we'll say, yeah, we seeded what? But yeah, so it's something we will do for Third Strike. But yeah, in general, definitely a good question, because boy, that can be a very delicate topic of, how do you play an event that you're hosting? If it's a small scene, you can kind of maybe not even avoid it, right? If you're playing round robin, you want to have somebody else there in the bracket, you kind of have to play. But yeah, there's things you can do for sure to kind of mitigate that potential for issues.
Yeah, and I think Vika has a great point on not participating in the event that you're running in terms of just straight up from TOing. It frees you up so much. From a player perspective, as somebody who has TO'd and played in events at the same time, it's heavily detracting from the player perspective. You have to context switch so fast from organizing things and managing the stream and getting people on the setups and dealing with hardware issues, trying to wrangle people, like from that chaos in one moment to sitting down and having to focus versus like a yun, right? And you're just like, oh man, now I have to context switch so hard. It is very difficult to do that. So it's almost like you're not really giving 100% to either. You're not really focused 100% on TOing, but you're also not really focused 100% on playing. There are some who can do it. Not to say that it's impossible. It's just very, very hard to do, particularly if it's your first time doing it. So yeah, I think the advice of not playing in your event, is very useful and very poignant in terms of being fair to seeding, but also from a TO perspective, like you want your event to be what gets the most attention no matter what. I think if I can convey anything to all of you guys in here, if you are a TO, all of the responsibility of everyone having a good time, of the event going well, of everyone being happy in terms of the venue owners and the players, the stream, the people watching on the stream, all of that is ultimately your responsibility as the TO. So ultimately, the event should always come first. Even if you're playing in the event, as a TO, TOing comes first, because you're the only one with that role. Players don't have that responsibility. Streamers have a certain level of responsibility. If you happen to, outsource streaming and you're not streaming it yourself, they have their own responsibility to the stream, right? They're not necessarily worried so much about what's going on within the event in terms of brackets and, setups and hardwares. But all that stuff is to say that we are a community first. And if you want people to continue supporting your events, you have to care about the event and you have to put the event first. TOing is a lot of self-sacrifice, and it's a lot of nowadays not so much, but there's still some thanklessness that goes into it because people just aren't aware of the sacrifice that goes into TOing sometimes. If you have a group of people that are willing to support you, as Jazzy is so very fortunate to have with all of you guys, then it makes it so much easier than being a one-man show. I've had to one-man show it where I played in the event, I created the bracket, I seeded it, I streamed it, I did commentary, I ran the bracket, and it's extremely stressful. If you can get people who you trust to be able to help you with even just small aspects like finding players or reporting scores or doing commentary, all of that stuff is very useful from the perspective of being able to execute a well-run event. And really that's what your focus should be on as a TO more than anything. This is more than just running a good bracket. If you run a good bracket but everything else sucked, the equipment sucks and the stream sucks and your scheduling sucks and the seating sucks, but the bracket went well, no one's going to remember all the stuff that went well. They're all going to remember the stuff that went wrong. And so as a TO, I think it's a lot to juggle, and the more help you can get, the smoother things can be. But really it's just about communicating with people, trying to make sure that everything is going according to plan, and then pivoting when you need to. One of the things when we first started doing these sort of workshops, we didn't call them workshops, we called them TO support groups, and some of you here were in some of those TO support groups. And if you were there at the very beginning, you'll know that the one thing that I tell every new TO is that if it can go wrong, it absolutely will. There are things that will happen at an event that are completely outside of your control, and that's okay. I don't think it's your fault. It's just stuff that happens, man. And if you're ready and you did the prep work and you have the right mindset and the right people helping you out, then you could pivot, and it makes it to where that wasn't such a big deal. Button goes out, oh well, whatever, or the stream goes down, we lost internet. I can't find this player, can't find that player. Those things are going to happen, man. And so instead of, panicking and being like, oh no, everything is wrong, everyone's going to hate me, no one's going to support my event. I think if people just see that you're putting the genuine effort into making a good event, you'll find, at least in this community, we're very fortunate in that regard. A lot of people, they'll support you, man. They'll have your back because they understand there's a certain level of self-sacrifice that goes into TOing. Particularly if you're a good player. If you're a good player and you're also TOing, I think they understand here's somebody who's sacrificing their competitiveness or their desire to compete in order to make sure that we all have an event that we can participate in, that we have an event that's smoothly ran, that we all enjoy, that we can continue to run back. And I think from a participation standpoint, it's much easier to accomplish that if you're not participating in the event. Did you have anything else to add to that, Venka or Jose?
Yeah, I think that you basically covered everything that I could possibly think of, including the fact that, like you said, we're very lucky in the 3S community and also grassroots in general. I think that we benefit from the fact that so many of us as players are also organizers or have aspirations of organizing. If you're trying to run an event that's like more of a major or more of a modern game, of course, it's going to be maybe a little more impatience. You're playing players that you might not have that same relationship with or that same attachment to. So kind of be prepared for that. Also, I kind of wanted to look at my friend Pop's question here. I'm not sure if you guys know the answer to this, because I certainly don't know the answer to this. He says, do you know if there's a way to disable the sign up for a team reminder email? So my friend Pops, he runs team tournaments on StartGG at Ducky Bowl, which is a really excellent tournament series happening in Detroit, thanks to Pops and Sam and others in that community. for these team events, when you sign up, you create a team on start, or you can specify as an organizer that you want to make the teams yourself. It sounds as though Pops is kind of creating teams himself as an organizer, and he's not even giving the players the chance to make their own teams. I think is more than fair. However, they're still getting an email asking them to create their team, which is kind of a drag. Could just be one of those glitches, Chase, regarding start. It's kind of a pain in the ass. One thing that I would advise, right off the top of my head, is maybe when you are hosting a team tournament, maybe don't bother creating the event beforehand if your intention is to make the teams yourself, right? Maybe you just have some kind of notification saying we're going to have teams afterward, and I'll make the teams, and you can do that during the actual event. That's my first suggestion. The other thing is, I thought I'd open the floor to my friends KD and Jose. I mean, any idea if you have to address that issue? Is everybody to disable that email?
I'm so glad Pops asked this question. Oh, do you have something, Jose?
Really quick, the way I've done it, and I'll just say this really quick. I've in StarGG, I've made it a singles tournament, but I've had people do it on site, and you got to tell me your team when you get there. Otherwise, and then I do all of it on site, meaning give me your team name or the 3 players. Okay, you're the 3 amigos. Cool, that's your team. It's listed as a singles tournament in StarGG, but it's really a team tournament, and it says in big bold letters, team tournament. But
I'm so glad you said that.
Show up.
That is, yeah.
That is the workaround,
dude. That is 100% the workaround, dude.
Yeah,
that is the best.
Because teams on Start is a nightmare, dude. Navigating teams on Start is so absurdly complicated, and I'm so glad Pops asked this question because I've had this specific problem happen to me. Even if you disable all notifications and emails, it will still notify everybody who does not have a team that they need to register for a team. Or if they're on an incomplete team, they will continue to get notifications that their team is incomplete. It is mad annoying. There is nothing that you can do about that.
Yeah, so basically what I'm hearing is you could take advantage of StartGG's team feature and just do it all on site, or maybe even better, just make it a singles tournament and literally just enter the players as the teams. That's what I've done in the past for the Jazzy finale. It's just so much easier that way. I really don't play with Start's team feature. But if you do want to play with it, maybe play with it later in the process. Again, play with it on site to kind of add people to teams that way if you want to.
Yes. Okay. The next question I want to address here is one that Net put in here. This is definitely the old question, but how do you deal with problematic players in the community? This is now a little bit beyond bracket running, and this speaks a little bit more towards TOing in general. But that is entirely discretion based. It is entirely based upon the reasoning for why you would want to potentially ban somebody or limit their participation, or maybe just instead of doing anything that's punitive, you could reach out to them and have a conversation with them. There are all sorts of options on the table, right? But I think it's not, unfortunately, a super uncommon experience that people have had to deal with problematic players. And, as a TO, you may have your prejudices and your opinions of other players or participants, even other TOs. And I think it's more important to just stay, objective about everything and to try and, hold those opinions and prejudices to yourself. And try and be as fair as you can and charitable as you can to people within reason. Obviously, if someone has done something super egregious or they've violated, somebody's, terms of agreement, or they've done something that is worthy of them getting banned or, ostracized from an event, those are things that you sort of have to deal with on a one-on-one basis. It depends again on the context of everything. Jazzy in the past, I won't get into specifics, but we've had to deal with this sort of issue in the past. And what we've always done is, as due diligence, we do an investigation. We talk to people. We try and figure out what happened. We use our best judgment, and then we sort of go accordingly from there, right? But I think instead of just taking someone's word for it, or jumping to conclusions, there is sort of an investigative process that you might need to go through to figure out the best course of action. I know some people are very difficult to deal with. There are definitely, and I'll just put it this way, there are definitely some people I do not like dealing with as a TO. But you know what? That's not really my position. My position is to make the event run as smooth as possible for everybody, even if I don't like the particular individuals that are participating in the event, right? They are just as welcome as people who I love, right? And I think it's that sort of mentality that people need to adopt. If they're problematic in the sense that they're causing delays or they're getting into disputes with other players, those are things that can then be used as reasoning for banning somebody or limiting their participation. It doesn't have to always be a ban either. You can just you can tell somebody like, hey man, you got really drunk and you started talking crazy to people. I'm going to DQ you, man. Just go home tonight. You can have those sorts of conversations with people because you as a TO are sort of a de facto authority figure, right? You have the ability to DQ people. You have the ability to ban people. And you have the ability to sort of limit who can participate in your event, which means that you are sort of in a de facto position of authority. Similarly to what Jazzy does, right? If it's your own individual event or if it's a major, those calls are often made with a lot of discretion. And oftentimes the person who is the target of those punitive actions, they might not agree with those punitive actions. But I do think it's important to get the context and sort of do your own sort of investigation to figure out, what actually happened or what is the best course of action for that. Similar to seating, if you have somebody who you trust, somebody who you can sort of confer with to sort of come to a consensus, so it's not like this unilateral decision. I decided this person is no longer welcome. I think it goes a long way when you can get other people's input and sort of be like, listen, I talked to a few people and multiple people are sort of in agreement here that this is the action that we should take. You may not agree with it, you may not like it, but at least it's not coming from a single individual, right? I think that's a lot easier to take to. And so every context is going to require its own sort of, unique handling of that situation. But in the past, I have had to be somebody who has been sort of the quote unquote disciplinarian. And like, it just is what it is, man. You talk to people straight, you let them know, listen, this is nothing personal, but I can't have you here, or you're acting really crazy right now, or what you just did was unacceptable. And they don't have to like it. I think very much in the same way that people, you can't please everybody with seating, you also can't please everybody with your actions, right? And what you're trying to do more than anything is just create like a safe environment for everybody to play in. And you're trying to make it welcoming more than anything else. Nobody's going to come back to an event if they feel unwelcome. Nobody's going to want to come back and step in an event that's adversarial or confrontational, that seems heavily prejudiced against them. Those people are going to sort of ruin what you're trying to do in terms of building a community and making it, consistent. And so you kind of have to take the preservational approach in terms of your event of like, I have to protect the integrity of the event and the players and the venue in order to be able to continue to do this. And so that sort of reasoning is what I would recommend in that sort of scenario. But again, it's going to depend on who it is, their history, what they did or didn't do, what they said or didn't say. And again, it's completely subjective. But is there anything that you guys would add to it, Jose or Vinca?
Yeah. So I kind of want to, I know we're been kind of a long meeting already. I appreciate you guys being here and being so patient with us, and I hope you guys are enjoying the workshop. But I did want to kind of, repeat some things you said, KD, that I think are especially important, or otherwise kind of share some additional insight. But for sure, when you're dealing with a problematic player in a community, it's going to be it's a lot of tension, and that's something that's going to be both a good thing and a bad thing. And obviously it's a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing as well, because it speaks to, in my opinion, what makes what we do as organizers so important, which is the social aspect. I think that we live in a culture where we see that, we see the social bonds kind of deteriorating or being replaced more with these pseudo-anonymous online relationships, which I think they can be very positive, but they can also sort of be kind of hollow compared to what let's say our predecessors experienced in previous generations. I think as organizers, we have the very important function of kind of teaching. I mean, I do mean teaching. This is going to be part of this problem. We have problematic players as well, right? Teaching basic social skills to our peers who might, since leaving high school, not ever had the chance to actually go out and be amongst people. You know what I'm saying? It's a very real thing that our generation deals with, where, whether you're dealing with kids who might themselves be in high school or people that are in their 30s, 40s that have not been actually out amongst people since high school, it creates some challenges regarding the social aspect. And that is definitely a problem. It's frustrating, but it's also sacred. It's something that's kind of important that we do. And in that respect, when you have someone who's acting up, it's an opportunity to engage with them on a human level. And when Katie said that we do investigations within Jazzy to kind of figure out what's the nature of these accusations, these allegations, what are the appropriate courses of action, how strict we got to be regarding how we deal with the situation. One thing that Katie kind of didn't mention as much, but he mentioned that he certainly understands the importance of it, is the dialogue with the party who has themselves been accused.
Yes.
Right. It is definitely about talking to others, about the situation, but almost more importantly, maybe even most importantly, it's about talking to that person who is themselves facing a situation now where they're in hot water and they're not happy about it for sure. They might be frustrated about it. They might even be belligerent about it. Maybe if you're lucky, not. But the case is that it's through that back and forth conversation with someone who is creating problems in your scene that you can, over time, hopefully, fingers crossed, address those issues. Maybe it's simply a matter of communicating to them in a way that is different from what they've had in the past. The importance of them getting along, the importance of them being kind or being patient, the importance of them turning the other cheek sometimes. Hey, if you got a problem with this guy, just don't talk to them, right? You can come to our scene, you can come play with us all the time if you want to. You can be in our bracket. It doesn't mean you guys got to be best friends. You guys can just literally just ignore each other or otherwise hang back. That can go a very long way sometimes. When you have a player that is either genuinely dedicated to being having bad behavior, or maybe they're just a screw up. Maybe they're just simply have poor social skills, and although they really want to fit in and they want to be part of the scene, maybe they repeatedly make mistakes that cause them to be ultimately a detriment to your events insofar as you can no longer allow them to participate because it's ruining everybody else's experience. Right? It's making other people's time not fun. That's an unfortunate scenario that does happen, but at some point you do have to kind of, it's just a reality that at some point the talking and the negotiating and the explaining, the tenderness, the kindness, it's not going to always get you to where you got to be in the end. You might have to actually ban somebody, but I think you'll be surprised at how often just kind of engaging with these players who might have caused you problems or are causing other people problems can go a very long way to just talk to them and try to be as patient as you can. And it might just be that they themselves need someone to listen or to maybe explain some things to them that maybe you wouldn't need explained to you because of your upbringing and your own social skills. But sometimes just talking can go a very long way. That being said, another thing is when you have a problem player in your scene, it's oftentimes not just one player. It's oftentimes more of a conflict between one or more players. It might be that this player who is actually causing problems for your scene, maybe if not for these other two guys that are there that he freaking can't stand, maybe it would be fine. So what you have is sort of like this group of players, a small group of players who, when they are together, there's tension that can make it less fun to play at your events. In that case, something to keep in mind is, again, talking to all of them when you're investigating to kind of get a sense of the whole situation, but really, really convey two things to all parties. One is sometimes when you have a problem with somebody, being distant or otherwise not taking things so personally can go a long way to not only making the event run more smoothly, but also maybe even repairing that relationship. I've seen guys in the past that have a big problem with each other on some real macho shit straight up, right? There's some real macho stuff and they can't stand each other and they're going to always cause problems when they're together in the bracket. But over time, they freaking start shooting the shit and telling jokes and hanging out and getting dinner with all of us. And it's not a big deal. It just takes sometimes a little bit of space. And I think it's important when you're kind of talking to these players to encourage them to give each other space. Because it's that space sometimes that allows them to forget what they hate about each other so much. You know what I'm saying? And they might actually end up being, closer friends than you would expect over time. yeah, it's definitely tricky, right? Depending on your scene, like Katie pointed out, some scenes have it luckier than others. I mean, here in the Midwest, let's say in Michigan, it's pretty rare that we have players that there's any kind of conflict that creates serious frustration. I'm sure some organizers in the Michigan scene can say that there's definitely been some, but I know for sure that some other scenes they definitely have a lot more to deal with regarding the conflict of personalities. That can be a very major concern. So I'm not quite sure what your situation is. I think Katie put it very well when he said there's going to be a lot of context. It's going to be a lot of what you do and how you handle it. It's going to be very much based on the individual situation. But certainly, if I'm going to give any broad advice, be patient with everyone involved, not just the people that are themselves problems, but especially yourself. Be patient. Try to remain relaxed. And as Katie pointed out, this might be somebody that you personally don't like. It happens all the time. Sometimes there'll be somebody that that's rubbed you the wrong way, and now you have to ask yourself, okay, this guy has been frustrating me. Is that enough reason for me to ban him from my events? What kind of precedent am I setting if a person I don't like, I ban from the event? And then you say, okay, well, also other players are frustrated by him. But again, even with that being the case, I think it's best to always try to be as patient as you can and to try make every effort, right, to smooth out these relationships, even if they're never going to be your best friend, even if they're never going to, be, anyone's closest homie at the venue on bracket night. The fact of the matter is that you want to be as inclusive as you can, and that means trying to give the benefit of the doubt and trying to work with people whenever you possibly can. One more thing I want to say before I kind of pass things back to Katie here is regarding problem players, one thing that's important to mention about Jazzy and about really, I think, any event that's running at a local venue is that oftentimes the local venue's policies regarding who is and isn't allowed, that's going to trump you as a TO.
Yep.
If you have not run an event before, that's important to keep in mind. If someone is acting up and they freaking, they're drunk and they cause a scene and, you're at the barcade and they spill a beer on the cab in the middle of a rant or they're raging, they might get banned from the venue. Then that saves you a lot of trouble. Unless that person is your homie, which has also been known to happen. But it can save you a lot of trouble. And that means that, very often as an organizer, your sort of internal decision-making regarding who's allowed, who's not allowed, it's going to, of course, be very important, but it's not always the most important thing, because sometimes you're going to have players that are simply not allowed because, they piss off the venue owner. And one last thing to kind of point out is oh no, I think I forgot what I was going to say. It was the venue owner. It's okay. I'll think of it later. But yeah, so really, yeah, it's definitely a very complicated question for sure. It's a very social human thing, right? It's I brings me back to what I think it was Professor X that said this earlier. Maybe it was Ryan said it earlier, right? About how when you're seeding, you should always strive to be as objective as possible. And I mentioned that when you're dealing with something very human, very social, that's not going to always be like the be all end all, but that's 10 times as true for when you're talking about personalities intersecting at events, right? Let's also talk about the fact that these events are competitive in nature, which makes people, especially people that might otherwise be totally cool in their daily lives, might actually be kind of assholes when it comes to competition.
Yeah, they get heated.
Yeah, things get heated sometimes. So definitely be patient, try to be understanding, try to speak softly, try to sort of be forthcoming regarding your feelings and the feelings of others. I think that this is such a challenge to engage with the social aspect of organizing events, but it's also the most important thing about organizing events, in my opinion. So thanks for the excellent question and good luck. It's a lot of difficult. It's going to require a lot of personal introspection, because it's one of the most growing things about being a TO, right? Is the fact that you have this opportunity to deal with so many people, and it's rewarding, but also super challenging. Thanks for letting me rant there, guys.
Yeah, for sure, man. Appreciate it. Do you have anything to add, Jose?
No, it's I'll be honest with you guys. It's hard to come behind you two guys because I learned a lot about TOing in the last 5 years from you two. So no, I just appreciate all the advice, and of course everyone being here just to take it all in, because even when I'm here and I'm supposed to be helping, I feel like, man, that's true. Oh yeah, and it reminds me and reinstills my value as a TO as well, and reminds me okay, I could definitely do this better. I could definitely make sure I'm doing more of that. So, but everything, all the advice that was given tonight, hope you all take it all in. And I always make myself very available. If anyone ever does want to reach out, I manage raking events for the Jazzy Circuit. So I'm talking to people all day about situations, scenarios, about like how to run this better, and then I, run it off to you guys and get a little more help. So yeah, it's don't be afraid to ask for help. Even as a TO, it was just said to us, that's very important. If you're not sure, please. And I think like I said, we make ourselves very available as well. If it's involving Third Strike, especially if it's a Jazzy event, yes, don't be afraid to tap us on the shoulder and be like, hey, I got a situation here. Do you think you guys can help, or just give me your opinion on it, or help seed, whatever the case. Like I said, I want to make myself very, very available, not just to like my scene, but scenes all over the country. So yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jose. I want to point out before we wrap up here and open it up to discussion for everybody. I unmuted everyone, so everyone's free now. That last question sort of segues perfectly into the next workshop. The next workshop is actually focused on community building, and that one will take place February 22nd. It will also be from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central. Essentially, we're going to be doing one of these at the last Sunday of every month. And so we've got 5 lined up for this season. But in between, if you guys want to reach out to us for additional information, obviously we did not cover everything that is bracket running. It is a very involved process. And likewise, we will not cover everything that is community building for the next one. And so I just appreciate all of you guys hanging out and being part of this workshop with us, and for all of your questions and insight. As far as the agenda goes, I think we covered pretty much everything that we wanted to cover. Thanks again so much to Jose and Venka for sitting in on this with me and offering their contributions. It's been super insightful to have other people to bounce ideas off of and offer their insight. But now, with the conclusion of the agenda, I want to open it up to anybody who has any sort of questions, comments, insight, anything that they wanted to contribute to the group.
One thing that my friend Nukepool pointed out here is, he says, when running a larger scale bracket online, keeping track of your players can be notoriously tough, I've heard. What kind of measures and strategies can we use as TOs to keep players informed and aware outside of just queuing up matches? So, Drew, I think that I'm kind of, maybe in a position to speak on this as someone who's run like 1 billion online tournaments. It's like my main thing over the years. Speaking about online specifically, I think that what you're finding, Drew, on Brews Day Tuesday is that the one of the new hosts, I appreciate profoundly. Thank you so much for that, Drew. But you're finding that, it's hard. This is true for offline events as well. I want to kind of take this chance to talk about player. This goes into community building as well. Talk about how important it is to ping people. And my friend Pop said here a few minutes ago, he said here, thanks for the ping at 7. It's helpful to get me into this meeting. But in general, I find that Third Strike players, man, and this is probably true for every FGC, boy, they want you to call them. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you go on to 8 different social accounts that all have 10,000 followers and say, hey, a week from now I'm hosting a tournament. Hey, 2 days from now. Hey, 5 minutes from now I'm hosting a tournament. Someone will show up 10 minutes late and say, dude, I didn't know this was happening. Like, I missed the at or whatever. They want you to call them on their phone. Don't do that. That's not a good thing to do. Don't enable that kind of behavior. But my point is that communication is super important. Touching base with your scene is super important. It's the most important way to get players into your bracket. As organizers, we sort of have a kind of a funny function, which is that it's our job to give people what they want, insofar as they want to play, this fighting game, then we want to enable them to do that. However, what makes it really, really funny, and anyone who has experience in this field will tell you this, they want to do it. That's what they want more than anything. But they also don't want to do it, Katie. They don't want to do it. They don't want to come out. They don't want to put on their fucking pants. They don't want to get in the car, right? They don't want to hop on Fightcade. They don't want to, schedule some time away from watching whatever they're watching that night. It's a challenge to get people to do what they actually want to do. What they want to do more than anything is be amongst their friends, play this fantastic game, get experience, share in that social energy. How many times have you been to a tournament, guys, and it ends and they go, oh my God, that was like a religious experience. That was so amazing to hang out with everybody and actually, get in person and shake hands, say GGs, meet new mentors, meet new proteges, talk about the game. Such a great time, man. I can't wait until, the next monthly. Then what happens, Katie? The next monthly comes and nobody wants to come out because it takes an investment. It requires them to put forth that first effort. And this is true for anything in life, guys, but there's a lot of inertia. There's a lot of inertia that comes from, just kind of wanting to stay at the crib and hang out. Even if it would be a life-changing experience to get out of the house tonight and go play Third Strike, it can be hard to convince people to do that. And so it's kind of funny that one of our roles as organizers is certainly as like babysitters. And it's sort of this function that we have to fill. It's not always fun to fill. We have to kind of knock on doors and get players that should, by this point, be more prepared to support us and come to our events because they know how great they are. You still have to kind of bug them to do it.
Well,
and they're going to love you for it in the long term.
I want to interject real quickly because I think maybe accidentally that we're conflating two different things. A TO, a tournament organizer, is a little different from a bracket runner, right? Like if you're running a bracket,
for sure.
Yeah, if you're running a bracket, you're just running a bracket. You don't necessarily have the same responsibilities as a tournament organizer. Now, sometimes a tournament organizer is the bracket runner, and actually,
almost always,
almost always the tournament organizer is the bracket runner, right? But I think tournament organizer takes on a little bit more of the social aspect, and so to sort of add to what Venka was saying. The way that you sort of keep people engaged is literally just interacting with them. Literally just have a conversation with them, make them feel welcome, make them feel like you're invested in their participation and their involvement. If you are somebody who can engage with somebody, whether it be socially or just through the means of the game, it speaks more to the community building thing than just running a bracket, but. There are different ways that you can do that. In person, it would just be engaging with them in conversation, maybe offering some insight if you're one of the more experienced players, or if they're a brand new player, or maybe just complimenting them on their play or something sick that they did. And then online, it's literally just interacting with them in the chat, being cognizant of their presence there, making sure that they feel that they're accounted for in the same way that everybody else is, right? Particularly if they're like a newer player or a shyer player, right? Maybe somebody that doesn't have a boisterous personality or an outgoing personality. I think this speaks a little bit more to the social side of things, but there is definitely something that happens that is appealing for people. A particular kind of person when it comes to fighting games. Fighting games seems to draw a particular kind of person, and those people are the people that are going to be the ones that are the most heavily invested. But just like anyone for anything, they want to feel welcome and they want to feel like their time isn't being wasted, and that there is an active participation that's happening for them in terms of being part of the event as opposed to someone who just happens to be at the event. And so what you're trying to do is you're just trying to be as welcoming as you can, and then just trying to make sure that they stay engaged either through directly engaging with them or just recognizing anything that they do, right? Similarly, from a TO perspective, the same can be said for streamers. The same can be said for commentators. The same can be said for bracket runners. The same can be said for people that are helping with technical issues. People that are swapping out hardware. People that are helping with the logistics of an event. If you go out of your way to let people know that you're grateful, not only for their involvement, but for their contributions, that goes a long way towards getting them to stay invested, right? If they feel like their efforts are being rewarded, if they feel like their time isn't being wasted, those are things that go a long way towards making sure that people stick around and continue to support. And that's more of like a leadership role than a bracket running role. So I just wanted to make that quick distinction there.
Yeah, and also, thanks for saying that. It reminded me that I was so much enjoying my tangent that I kind of got away from my original point, which was, Drew's question is specifically about getting players to basically come when it's time for them to play, then they should play on stream, right, or play online. And the reason I went on that tangent, Drew, is because when you have a positive rapport with your scene, they will help you run the event. And that's something that we've seen with, Bruise Day, we've seen with Southeast Throwdown, right? We've seen with a lot of these online series that we're lucky to have in our community, that when players, they feel like they're a part of your community, they feel that they're valued, then they will take a bigger interest in being where they got to be when they got to be there. So you ask for a general advice for, how to wrangle players outside of just queuing them up traditionally. And yeah, that's my answer. The answer is make sure you have a positive relationship with your community, and that'll go a very long way to helping make events run smoother, to be honest. You'll be surprised to how much difference that makes. Yeah, if these players are not players that know you, they don't know how you work, they don't know your expectations, they don't know that you have their back, they're probably going to be less likely to be paying attention, or otherwise, they're not going to feel as invested in making the event a success. Basically, you want to make sure that your community understands that it's not your event, it's everyone's event. It's the event of the scene, right? It's the event of this community, whether it be online or offline. And when the players take an ownership over the quality of the event, as they should, then, you're going to... Thank you, Katie. I can see your messages on our stream here. Yeah, so it's he's saying here, wrap it up, G. But yeah, guys, it's been a pretty long meeting. It's been more than 2 hours.
Yeah, because I just noticed that we're about to hit the 2 hour mark.
Yeah, guys, this was really great. It was very positive for me. And like Katie pointed out, you guys have the chance now to unmute if you want to and share some thoughts. Of course, it's going to be maybe a little bit hectic for a minute here, but I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts and any final thoughts you guys might have. And again, thank you guys again for joining us here. Let me see here who I can thank in particular, actually. I've got the list of... this is probably our biggest meeting ever for Jazzy, right? It's been really, really positive.
Yeah, man, I think we had one TO support group that was kind of this size, but this is definitely more than that.
Yeah, thank you, Six Kiss. Thank you, Casa Bunch, for everything. Thank you, Joe Jost, for being a longtime friend of many online tournament series and offline as well. Thank you to I'm Borderline for being a new sponsor for Jazzy. Thank you, Jimbo, for Southeast Throwdown, an excellent online tournament series. Thank you to Mustardback for everything you've done for the PNW community. Neko Dojo, Fight Kingdom, that scene's been growing so fast thanks to, in large part, to your efforts. I thank you, Neon, again, for being a constant supporter of so many events, even offline events lately, or rather a couple of years ago especially, and even Scuffle. Thank you to NRET for joining the server for this very meeting. I hope you'll come back to the next one. Thank you, Pops, for everything you do again for Detroit. That's this is my home state. I mentioned to you privately, Pops, that I wish I could do more for the Michigan scene, and the fact that you and Sam and everybody have stepped up to kind of fill that function is something that's very personal to me. So thank you for that. Thank you, Drew, for all of your love over the years and for doing Bruise Day Tuesday. Thank you to Rose City for joining us as a closer part of our Jazzy team this season to help us with upcoming unannounced events. Thank you to Ryan again for, I don't know you personally, Ryan, but even a huge supporter of the socials, which I run. So I appreciate seeing you in my notifications every day on Twitter, etc. And of course, thank you, 3Bench, for being one of the best I've ever had in this game. What a fun little meeting this ended up.
Yeah, did anyone have anything that they wanted to add, or any questions that they had that we didn't cover already? If you don't, that's completely fine. That means that we covered everything. Once again, guys, if you want to join us for the next one, it will be February 22nd, 6 to 8 p.m. Same channel. Please feel free to reach out to us. In the meantime, I know there was one person, Insomniac Robot, who reached out to me on Twitter. Guys, I have everything on my socials as far as notifications turned off. The best place to get a hold of me is going to be on Discord. So if you guys want to reach out to me and have me respond in a timely fashion, that will be Discord. I apologize to Insomniac Robot. I didn't even see his message until today. So definitely reach out to me there. But the rest of us will be here on the server to answer any sort of questions or any needs that you guys have. I just wanted to appreciate the time that Venka and Jose have contributed towards this workshop. The very next one, I think we're going to have Stone Cold Ryan Meyer and Borderline help out with that one. So Borderline, who's in the chat here, we'll get together and come up with the agenda for that. And then I'll post that in the Discord as well. So if you guys want to kind of keep abreast of what we're going to be talking about and maybe have any questions ahead of time so that it can sort of inform the agenda, that would help as well. I see you guys in the chat. Yeah, thank you guys again. I will see you guys at the next one.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Woof.